heckling.
Nigerian English, another variety that breaks Schneider's postcolonial mould, and I trust you have heard the rising intonation there. Preliminaries. Nigeria is the largest country in Africa, with a population of over 200 million. It's one of the largest English-speaking countries in the world. It's in the outer circle category. It's English-speaking because of the past enterprise of colonists who conquered and sometimes settled beyond their homeland, taking the English language with them. Schneider has brought the resulting evolution of varieties of English under a comprehensive theory, his dynamic model. This presentation aims at providing a fresh, concise summary of the salient features of the Nigerian variety, but it also includes some evaluation of the dynamic model. Britain proclaimed the protectorates of northern and southern Nigeria in 1900, and the dichotomy of north and south continues to colour much debate in Nigeria today. Nigeria is a country of great diversity. There are three big ethnic groups: the Hausa in the north, the Yoruba and the Igbo in the south. And like India, Nigeria has a federal constitution comprising a number of states, currently 36. Here we have a map of the ethnic groups, which is also a map of the languages. And in the next map, we see the 36 states. English in Nigeria today. English is a major lingua franca and the principal language of government, higher education, etc. Nigerian literature in English is widely known internationally. In the spoken medium, Nigerians interact with one another chiefly using an indigenous language. But an increasing number clearly know English better or use it more often than any other language. The number of Nigerians who can be said to be speakers of English is hard to estimate. The development of Nigerian English. A variety of English different from British or American English has developed in Nigeria for much the same reasons as in other outer circle countries. Like other English-speaking countries in West Africa, but unlike those in Eastern or Southern Africa, Nigeria was never an area of white settlement. And this puts a question mark over the applicability to Nigeria of Schneider's model, because the model features an STL strand, the settler's perspective, one of the two strands making up the development of a new variety. Was the choice of STL the best label? Could a different label be found? But there are still radical differences between the post-colonial English of, for example, Australia, and that of, for example, Nigeria. The experience of Nigeria also differs from that of Kenya or India. Schneider recognizes that a model is an idealization, but local manifestations of the model ought not to be too different from one another. Records are hard to come by, but Nigerian English undoubtedly began to develop chiefly as a result of contact during the colonial era. Contact was between Nigerians on the one hand and white, standard English-speaking British government officials, soldiers, traders, and Christian missionaries on the other. Missionaries took the lead in establishing schools that provided Western education. Schools were thus naturally the principal locale for the learning of standard English, but probably also for the development of Nigerian English. In the Yoruba-speaking Southwest, missionaries had been active from the 1840s onwards. Britain had annexed Lagos in the southwest and established the first colonial administration in 1861. The first university was established at Ibadan in the southwest in 1948. Nigerian English has probably received more serious attention from Nigerian scholars in the southwest than those from elsewhere. Schneider shows that in various countries, a distinctive kind of English developed in the colonial era as well as subsequently. But the title of his 2007 book is still Postcolonial English. Perhaps this is a bit strange. Nigerian English and Nigerian Pidgin English. Recognition of a variety called Nigerian English tends to be obscured by the existence of Pidgin, which is another contact language with a history longer than that of Nigerian English. Pidgin English, Nigerian Pidgin English, has had an increasingly high profile in recent years. The BBC World Service now broadcasts in it, as well as in Nigeria's main indigenous languages. Perhaps we should say purely indigenous languages. Millions of Nigerians speak it, more in the south than in the north. Definition of Nigerian English. The less visible Nigerian English can be defined as follows. It's fundamentally standard English, but it has undergone much adaptation to the Nigerian cultural environment, and it is also influenced by Nigerian learners' needs and problems. Nigerian English thus has many general characteristics in common with Indian English, Singaporean English, etc. Nigerian English is given due attention in works offering a comprehensive overview of English worldwide, such as Schneider, but others give it little attention, for example, Melchers and Shaw, 2013. The following examples illustrate the three varieties here in question: Nigerian English, Nigerian Pidgin English, and British English. First, and the context here is that someone moves away temporarily from someone else and says something. In British English, the person is likely to say, "I'll be back in a minute." In Nigerian English, "I'm coming." Nigerian Pidgin English, "I dey come." "I'm coming" has become an almost classic example of Nigerian English. Perhaps it is semantically anomalous, but it breaks no morphosyntactic rules. The second context is that someone wants to express approval of someone else's effort. British English might say, "You have done quite well." Nigerian English will say, "You have tried." Pidgin English will say, "You don't try." More examples of Nigerian English can be found in all the main language areas: phonology, morphosyntax, lexis, style, also spelling and punctuation. First, spelling. Dining room, that is to say D-I-N-N-I-N-G. Strength, spelled S-T-R-E-N-G-H-T. Punctuation has not much been studied, but in formal writing we find a relatively greater use of commas, for example, after sentence initial adverbs. Segmental phonology. Examples are that the schwa vowel is low and very open, the goat vowel is pure and back, and dental fricatives are replaced either by alveolar stops or by sibilants. Suprasegmental phonology. We find the non-reduction of vowels in unstressed syllables, for example, government. We find primary stress being given to the last syllable of, for example, civilize. We hear civilize. We have the invariable use of the falling tone for statements and commands. For example, don't be afraid. We never hear don't be afraid. Morphosyntax. For example, the pluralization of uncountable or collective nouns. For example, alphabets. The non-use of the definite article. For example, majority of people. You people, used to express second-person plurality. Preference for that rather than who as a relativizer. The regularization of past tense and participle forms. For example, bind, binded, binded. Nigerian English lexis. And here there are a number of categories: loanwords, coinages, calques, extension, pleonasms, archaisms, etc. Loanwords from indigenous languages include food items such as egusi, dress items such as agbada, transport items such as keke, and also discourse markers. Coinages. Not a large group, but it includes new collocations such as area boy, meaning urban miscreant. Calques are numerous. The most famous, perhaps, is sorry, used to express sympathy, not an apology. Many calques, including sorry, are also examples of extension or semantic shift. And further examples of extension or shift are more so, nearly always meaning moreover, severally, meaning several times, the phrasal verbs take in, meaning become pregnant, and sleep off, meaning fall asleep. Pleonasms include wave one's hand and frown one's face. Archaisms, for example, thrice, gainsay, also shall, used with second or third person subjects. Idioms. Nigerian English has original idioms such as shine your eyes, meaning look carefully, and you will see pepper, meaning you will suffer severe punishment. It also varies the forms of existing idioms, for example, more grease to your elbow. Idioms also include clichés such as beef up security and heat up the polity, quite common these days. Style. Writing in formal contexts tends towards a relatively high degree of formality. For example, it favours expressions like submit that, posit that, opine that. The examples above motivate some general observations. First, several apparently distinctive Nigerian forms are also found in other outer circle varieties, for example alphabets, also found in Indian English. Secondly, Nigerian English is found more in the spoken than in the written medium. Nigerian novels written in English supply examples of Nigerian English, but these usually occur in the character's dialogue, not in the narrator's discourse. Thirdly, in discussing an outer circle variety, such as Nigerian English, it is not realistic or possible to avoid the use of the issue of the difference between errors and legitimate variants. Nigerians who are generally pro-Nigerian English tend to regard all the forms presented above as Nigerian English expressions, and the implication is that the forms are all acceptable, are standard. Other Nigerians, often older people, object to almost all of the expressions, fundamentally because they do not feature in standard British English. However, even the majority of those in the pro camp, who would probably use that instead of who as a relativizer, would still regard dinning as an error and would not accept the use of binded as the past participle of bind. The expressions Nigerian English and Standard Nigerian English are both ambiguous. Jowitt, that is myself, therefore invented popular Nigerian English to refer to all distinctive Nigerian forms, both errors and variants. But this expression has not been widely adopted. The issue of errors versus variants clearly has much bearing on the identification of an endonormative standard Nigerian English, maybe of the standard subvariety of any other outer circle variety. The issue is also related to the question of the differentiation of subvarieties of Nigerian English or any other variety. Implicitly, at least, two parameters have been used to differentiate subvarieties of Nigerian English: ethnic and educational. The ethnic parameter has not been much used in Nigerian English studies. Some investigation has been made of differences in English phonological forms between one ethnic group and another, but few attempts have been made to correlate grammatical and lexical Nigerian English forms with ethnicity. The educational parameter, and it's tempting to combine this with the familiar acrolect, mesolect, basilect triad. Use of it is complicated by the difficulty of deciding who in Nigeria today counts as being educated, and by the difficulty of any attempt to assign a particular expression to a particular lect. Thus, the Nigerian English acrolect might be defined as the usage of graduates, but a high degree of divided usage would probably still be found among graduates. Some would use a particular expression or find it acceptable, others would not use it or would reject it. So perhaps it is impossible for education-based subvarieties to be defined and specified. Calls for standardization. Calls are often heard today for the codification or standardization of Nigerian English. They are expressed, for example, in posts on the WhatsApp platform of the English Scholars Association of Nigeria, ESSAN, formerly known as the Nigerian English Studies Association. The calls for standardization often envisage a dictionary of Nigerian English. And some dictionaries have already been published: Ibuanusi, Blench, Okoro. And Okoro's dictionary is the first volume of a projected 2-volume work. Also, there is Adegbite et al. Okoro discusses standard Nigerian English, but is skeptical about its existence. Adegbite et al. Assert that they are seeking to produce a standard Nigerian English dictionary. But many of the entries are students' usage or are regarded by many stakeholders as errors. For example, bind, binded, binded. Thus, an acceptable dictionary of standard Nigerian English is yet to appear, and so is a comprehensive dictionary of popular Nigerian English, which is not the same thing. Conclusion. This presentation has demonstrated that Nigeria has definitely progressed deeply into Phase 3 of Schneider's model, nativization. Schneider is right to suggest that Phase 4, endonormative stabilization, has not yet been reached. Schneider adds that Phase 4 may be just around the corner, which means the beginning of the phrase rather than the end of it, I assume. Although Ugoji has a different view, the presentation has also suggested that Phase 5 of the model, differentiation, has barely, if at all, begun. Thank you.
Clapping to a recording. Yeah. Yeah. It's going nuts. He comes online. We need to clap him there too. It's so funny that it's such an.
I think he's already online.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yes,
Right. Yes, exactly.
because there's also Q&A.
Yeah, yeah. Good morning, David.
Hello. Hello there. Yes, good to see you.
We were just laughing because we've just all clapped you and you didn't hear us clapping you. So we're going to clap you properly.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for the clap. Thank you for the clap.
So we've got, is that a question in the chat that I see? Or just a comment?
Oh yes, it's a question. Thank you for your talk, is what Mirka says. I liked it how you included also spelling and punctuation in your discussion of features, although there has not been much research into this. These are hardly ever mentioned. If anyone knows studies on them in World English, I'd be curious to hear about them. So if you do, pop them in the chat. In our data, Nairaland Forum, a frequent Nigerian English spelling feature is concatenation of words so that word pairs are written as single words, including cases like in fact, in case, of course, every time, any day, more so, hard work, etc., each occurring thousands of times. Might you have any suggestion for what might motivate this beyond the fact, which you also mentioned, that the spoken competence in Nigeria is higher than the written competence? Might be a difficult question, but I thought I'd ask it anyway.
Mirka, you are good at asking long questions. So David, over to you.
Well, about the spelling of words like in fact, many years ago, when I first saw it, I just assumed that because we have indeed written as one word, surely in fact should also be written as one word, which seems very logical to me. So perhaps that goes for many of the other examples given. Coming back to the first thing that the speaker said, yes, it seems to me that not much work has been done in studies of New Englishes about punctuation. But perhaps it will be possible with the arrival of corpora. I say the arrival of corpora, but they arrived a long time ago, to make more investigation of this. Perhaps we're concentrating too much on grammar.
See what I mean about the internet?
We also
Lexis, but punctuation. I forget towards the end. Can you refresh my memory?
Sorry.
Sorry, we lost you for a little while, David.
Right. And I think I've lost you. They keep telling me that my connection is unstable. Can you hear me say that?
Yes, I can hear you say that.
Right. Okay. Oh, you did hear me say that, right?
Yes.
So the connection is unstable. Right.
So I'm wondering, David, whether the best thing might be for folk who do have questions to send them on to you. But there is one question we had in advance, which Kingsley is going to ask you on behalf of.
Yes, that's on behalf of Oluwateniola.
Exactly so.
Participant. She wants to know your suggestions on how to go about documenting regional varieties of Nigerian English.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Yes.
Yeah,
Hello.
So we had a question
Hello.
that came up a little while ago. Do you want to maybe pop in the chat that we will send questions to him? Because we can no longer communicate or something.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. We can hear you, David. But what we think is best is if we send questions to you by email, and we'll send you the names of the people who have asked the questions.
Yes. Well, that's absolutely fine by me. Absolutely, more than absolutely fine. Incidentally, just now you didn't hear me say which is a very Nigerian expression meaning astonishment, surprise, anger when something annoying happens, like the loss of the connection. But shall I try to answer the question that Kingsley put to me just now? I mean, I could hear him ask that question about. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Very
about
brief, David, because unfortunately we've got something else that should have started at 11:30.
Right. Okay. Yes. So fine by me. Yes. Thank you very much.
So listen, thank you so very much, David. I'm sorry it's been a bit patchy, but it's been a really, really interesting talk and ties in really nicely with what we've heard this morning about Kenya and about Hong Kong. Thank you so much, and we'll be in touch, David. Take care.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.